Slimy Albo this week, praising his slippery bill that he's trying to push through with capping the age or making sure that the age of people on social media is 16 minimum, framing it as this protection mechanism for our kids in this country. But Elon swiftly came in and nipped that one in the bud, exclaiming that it was just an excuse or a backdoor way to have control over digital IDs, which I completely agree with. I wanted to unpack that a little bit with you because there's a couple of aspects to this that are interesting. I mean, on the surface, it actually sounds like quite a good idea to protect our kids from the dangers of social media. But on the same token, we have to look at the motives behind why they're trying to roll it out. And, as we were discussing over coffee this morning, I think the education around the usage of social media should be enriched. Do I have the answers for the exact regulations that need to be put in place? No. But what I ultimately feel is the responsibility should be on the parents of helping the kids navigate what is a very tricky part of every adolescent's life. Going from 13 to 18 isn't easy at the best of times, but you throw social media and it's extremely difficult. So I'm not opposed to the idea of some sort of system that can help kids navigate that path, right? That I think we could all probably unanimously agree that if there was a framework, a mutually agreed upon framework, that could work quite well. I mean, Albo's just spent, what did he spend? Fucking 200 million on the referendum, which was an absolute flop. Why don't you go out and start to pose some serious questions and spend some serious money on figuring out how we can do that effectively, instead of slipping through a piece of legislation through the back door so that you can control people and control their IDs and ultimately parent everyone's kid.
Yeah.
So give me a break. And ultimately it's because they want to control the information these people can see, and they want to know what you're looking at more visibly. So that's my stance on it. And it was great to see this week that I've heard from the people I listen to that the misinformation bill is pretty much officially dead. So the bill has been killed. I have heard that from reputable sources. So I think that's done. I don't know if it's been officially announced, but I think it's done. So that would be huge. But the next battle is this 16-year-old age thing. We need to nip that one in the bud. And it's almost in tune with everything else that's happening in the West. The problem is that Albo's still in power, and whoever's pulling the strings on him, they know that they've still got 10 to 11 months left of power before they'll probably be overthrown. But it seems like they're just trying to throw Hail Marys till the end. And I know you feel quite strongly about the Australian political landscape, where we're heading. What do we do? So, it'd be good for the audience to hear from you, Jacko, on a little bit about what I've just said, but also more broadly where we're heading and what leadership options do we have, and what does the landscape look like as we lead into the election next year?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think you unpacked that really well. I think Anthony Albanese has basically had a few fatal flaws during what is probably going to go down as a very disappointing prime ministership and time. Labor government for Australia. So Albanese's fatal flaws being clearly the voice referendum was a disaster. There's no sugarcoating it. It was a catastrophe, and the people rejected it as they should have. Secondly, this misinformation bill, Nath. I mean, and I'm actually really inspired by the people of Australia who have stood up against it. I'm really inspired by people of Australia who have seen what was a looming threat to free speech being the core pillar of democracy. And Australians have again stood up, seen it for what it is, and taken the common sense option of throwing it in the bin, swish, bang, and it's fantastic because that would have had disastrous consequences for this country.
Oh, yeah.
And as you spoke to, I think the third fatal flaw in terms of policy is this 16-year-old social media ban bill. Now, as you say, when I heard about this on principle, first reaction, I'm a trusting person, sadly, but on principle, I thought terrific. Oh, how good. Okay, so, great. I think there'll be guidelines for, kids not seeing the toxicity that can prevail on social media up until a certain age. I think that's, on premise is good. And yes, if it was done sensibly, whereby parents, could alter the rules, they might think differently. Absolutely go for it. Great. Give the parents control of their kids. It's important. Yeah, there was a way that policy could have been presented to the public in a palatable manner, but that's not the case. It is clear as day, and again, thank you to X and Elon and Community Notes, and Pauline Hanson pointed it out, funnily enough, on a recent tweet that no, the intent here, sadly, and it's I think a prevailing sentiment of the government. This is always this intent behind this Labor government that's different to what's being presented to the public. And in this case, I think my opinion is it's this digital ID system, and it's not just for the kids. If they prevailed and got this through, everyone would need to verify their age, verify their identity on social media. And as we know, digital IDs would give all sorts of power to the government in terms of tracking and in terms of basically Big Brother having total eyeballs on your every movement, spend, activity, hobby. And I don't think that's something that the vast majority of Australians would be comfortable with. We're not living, after all, we're not living in Saudi Arabia or even China. A very different way of living here that we all, I think, value and cherish. So let's make sure, once again, Australia, that we stay awake and we quash this. We quash this before it gets live.
And I think we will. That's the beauty of this stuff now. We just sniff it. We sniff it out straight away. But yeah, that's the malevolent side of what they're trying to do. Is they always position the bill as this seemingly heartfelt solution to what is quite often a decent problem. Even the misinformation thing, you link it to like they've got that link through ACMA to doxing. They pass that. Doxing, cyberbullying, protect the kids online, like Julian Grant. They try to position it all as this saving grace to these grand problems that we can all agree exist. But behind the scenes, it's not really positioned for that. It's positioned to control, subvert, track, and dominate. And I'm glad that everyone's seeing through that.